if you guys are looking to absolutely annihilate bosses with some of the highest single target damage in the game, if not the best boss damage in the game, you guys have definitely come to the right place. As you can see, you can just absolutely nuke everything, and my build is very far from perfect, and it is honestly just a ton of fun to play with. I'm calling this like Poison Shadow. I don't really know what to call it, but basically you use Poison Imbuement to do a crazy amount of boss damage, and you pair it with Shadow Clone and you just nuke everything. I did very particularly set this build up to just function as well as humanly possible against bosses, but I did adapt it a little bit so that you guys can actually bring it into dungeons and have it function and not just be only a boss killer, because right now there isn't really an incentive to have a boss killing only build unless you're interested in doing like the Echo of Lilith or something, but most people aren't really going to be doing that. So I figured that I would adapt the build so that you guys can actually use it in general play, so you can run around and just literally nuke all the elites that you're fighting while also insta-killing the bosses and impressing all of your friends. June 24th, I'm going to be doing a subathon over on Twitch where I'm going to be helping a bunch of viewers, running dungeons with you guys, helping you guys level up new characters, etc. It'll be a ton of fun, so if you guys want to hang out, help support the stream while also getting helped yourself, feel free to check me out on June 24th. Would love to see more of you guys around. Real quickly, I want to show you guys a fantastic way to find new and interesting builds while also being updated on what the new best thing is and seeing what the meta currently is. And that is with today's sponsor, Mobalytics. You can download their desktop app for free. Big thanks to them for sponsoring the channel. It's a huge help. As you can see here, there's just a crazy amount of builds on here, but what's particularly helpful is that you can find certain tier lists for the build. So recently I've been playing my Druid a ton. I've been hearing a lot about the Crone build and the Tornado Stormwolf. I'm playing the Tornado Stormwolf, but I'm really interested in the Crone build, so I could see this is another S tier build. I'm very interested in looking at it, especially because it is, incredibly powerful, and boom, I can just click right on it and see with a very clean UI exactly what I need, all the skill points, all the legendaries. My favorite thing is they actually have a stat priority for your pieces of gear, which is incredibly helpful to just have while playing the game to be able to easily reference things. And what's also incredibly helpful about this is with a simple button press, you can just open the entire UI in your game. So if I'm on my Druid here, I could be looking at gear in my inventory, be like, okay, rings, I'm looking for vulnerable damage, barrier gen, crit chance, etc. And if I want to copy the skill tree, I don't have to have this on my other monitor and be looking over here. It's just right here, right? So I could very, very easily, okay, I want Storm Strike, I want Claw, whatever. It's incredibly easy to follow, and honestly, it's just going to get better over time as this becomes more and more populated with even more builds, and as they start to integrate more things into the overlay. Super helpful. And for those of you guys that download it, you'll have a chance to win one of these epic Diablo statues that are worth a ton of money, and they're incredibly cool. So definitely make sure to download using the link in the description, and a huge thanks to Mobalytics for sponsoring today's video. All right, hopping into the build, like always, the entirety of the build will be over on my website. For this build, there's kind of two variants. There's the variant of I want to kill a boss, like a world boss, as fast as humanly possible. I need all the damage everywhere. And then the other variant is you lose a little bit of boss damage, but you gain like survivability and just general utility and other things so that you can actually clear dungeons. I'm mostly going to go over the dungeon path because most people don't really care about just nuking bosses, but I will talk about some of the alternatives, and that stuff will also be on the website. So when it comes to your skills, we need to use Puncture so that we can apply Vulnerable on bosses. Pretty simple. We need Vulnerable on bosses. Twisting Blades, because Twisting Blades does the single highest damage of any rogue skill in the game because of the Twisting Blades Orbiting Legendary. Does 30% of the damage of the return hit, but it also procs 5 times, so 150% extra damage. That's a lot of damage. So yeah, we need that. Twisting Blades, best skill for boss damage. And then a lot of people are wondering why I don't take Dash and I take Shadow Step instead. It kind of sucks playing without Dash, but if we want to nuke bosses, we need to sacrifice one of our mobility, and I would rather sacrifice Dash than I would Shadow Step. If you're doing Lilith, Dash is great to be able to dodge things, but pretty much for everything else in the game, you need Shadow Step because it gives you 8% crit chance, which is better than the 15% crit damage that Dash gives you. You can apply it all the time, it stuns enemies, and it's your source of unstoppable. But also when you're fighting bosses, they teleport all over the place, so it's incredibly helpful to just have Shadow Step to stay on the boss's tail and to keep nuking them. And then we have Poison Trap. A lot of people don't like Poison Trap. I personally don't even like Poison Trap, but the benefit of this is that we get to take advantage of damage versus trapped enemies, which is crazy in the Paragon board. You get a ton of damage versus this, so it's very helpful there, and it does bring decent utility when just doing normal dungeons. Then we have Poison Imbuement. Shadow Imbuement is obviously like my favorite rogue skill in the game. If you guys have watched my videos, you know that. But Shadow Imbuement isn't going to help us against bosses, right? Poison Imbuement just gives us a whole bunch of extra damage. So that is why we use Poison Imbuement. Same thing with Shadow Clone versus Death Trap. Death Trap doesn't really help us against bosses. Shadow Clone is just extra damage against bosses. If our goal is to nuke bosses as quickly as possible, this is a setup that we want to run with. When it comes to skill tree, pretty basic stuff. You want to get Puncture for the vulnerable, max out your Twisting Blades and put on Advanced Twisting Blades, and then Sturdy and Siphoning Strike for the survivability, Shadow Step for the crit and the stun, Weapon Mastery for big damage, and then we have Poison Trap. And instead of using Poison Trap has a chance to reset the imbuement cooldown. We actually use Subverting so that we get 10% increased poison damage, which pairs very nicely with our poison imbuement. 3 points into Exploit. I have 6 into Malice because I have 3 on my amulet, but just make sure to get the 3. Precision Imbuement is helpful because we have Poison Imbuement up a lot of the time with one of our Legendaries. So we get Poison Imbuement and then we get the extra crit thing so that Poison Imbuement can technically crit. It's not fantastic, but it still is a lot of damage. My Poison Imbuement is rank 9 because I fully ranked it up, and I also have ranks on my helmet, so that's pretty good. You could even get ranks on the amulet too to get it to like rank 12. And then I have 3 points into Deadly Venom. If you're having survivability issues, you would take 2 points out of Deadly Venom and put them into Debilitating Toxins, and then maybe 1 point out of Poison Imbuement and put it there as well. Or you take a point out of Subverting Poison Trap. This only really helps against bosses. This doesn't really help against like generally playing. So then we go into Shadow Clone to max it out, and then we get 3 points into Innervation for the energy generation, which is pretty much mandatory for single target. And then we have Trap Mastery, just for 12% crit chance. Pretty much constantly have this activated because we use our Poison Trap. And then I have 1 point into Adrenaline Rush and 3 into Haste. This is literally just for movement speed. It's really not that good. If you didn't care about the movement speed, you could decide to go for the survivability via Debilitating Toxins, or if you want to nuke bosses better, you could get Alchemist Fortune. I think this is pretty weak, but ultimately it's still your best bet to get a little bit of extra damage against bosses because it pairs nicely with one of our Legendaries. Alternatively, if you have the Penitent Greaves, you could also just take the points out of here and put 3 points into Frigid Finesse for a little bit of extra damage. And for this build, we want to be using Inner Sight because Preparation isn't going to help us too much. We're going to have energy problems a little bit, not having Shadow Imbuement, so Inner Sight is pretty much mandatory, especially if you're fighting a boss. You need Inner Sight. It's pretty insane. Now let's talk about Legendaries. First I'll talk about the mandatory ones, and then I'll talk about some different options you have. This build actually has a decent bit of variety in terms of if you want to just nuke bosses, or if you want the build to just be generally pretty functional. But let's talk about the mandatory ones first. So Twisting Blades on the crossbow. This is your highest source of increased damage, especially for single target, so make sure to at least get this on your crossbow. Another one that I would argue is mandatory is Accelerating Aspect. Just increase your attack speed by 25% pretty much all the time. This is very, very helpful. Another one is Vengeful for 9% crit chance. 9% crit chance is very good when you have as much crit damage as I do, 343%, and I even have more than that with stuff in the Paragon Board, so crit chance is fantastic. And then you want Corruption for increased effectiveness of your imbuement skills, so your Poison Imbuement basically has 40% increased effectiveness if you have a good roll of this. Those are pretty much the mandatory ones. Now, when it comes to different options that you have, my build could have like 50% more damage, and that's because I'm not using Temerity with Conceited Aspect. You could put on Temerity and lose some defensive stuff if you just want to nuke a boss, and then you could put Conceited Aspect on your amulet for like over 30% increased damage. I have double Shadow Step on my amulet because I'm using the Penitent Greaves, but if I really wanted to just nuke bosses, what I would do, sorry if this is a little all over the place, but if my only goal was killing bosses, I would take Penitent Greaves off and I would put some normal boots on. I'd put the Shadow Step thing on those normal boots. I would put on Temerity, and then I would put Conceited Aspect on my amulet for even more damage. I'm not doing that because for general play, this is what I would recommend because Penitent Greaves is just fantastic overall, and Temerity nerfs your survivability quite a lot, but also the damage is perfectly fine without doing that stuff anyways. Another great way to increase your damage, not great way, but an okay, is with Inner Calm here. Anytime you stand still, you just gradually increase your damage. I don't really think this is perfect for the build, but I kind of had an extra slot here that I wanted to play around with. And if you have a max roll, this is 10% increased damage for each second you stand still. And you don't need to move a lot of the time when you're fighting bosses. You're kind of just nuking them, so that's really good. One of the better things if you are actually focused on killing bosses as quickly as possible is you pretty much need Bursting Venoms. Anytime you crit with a Poison Imbued skill, you have a chance to create a pool, and then this pool gives you infinite no cooldown on your Poison Imbuement, so you can just spam it like a crazy person. I just have this in my bags, and I actually swap between my Umbral Ring and this ring whenever I'm fighting a boss. So if I'm about to do a boss, I just put this ring on, and then if I'm just generally playing the game, you want Umbral for the energy regen. That's incredibly helpful there. And then if your energy regen is really bad or you don't have an Umbral, you want to look for a ring that increases your energy regen whenever you kill a vulnerable enemy up to like 70%. That will help you a ton. Another thing I see a lot of people using is the Ashiara's Conjar. The reason that I don't recommend this for this build, you can definitely use it instead of the Inner Calm and a sword, but it's a dagger, so it does not come with critical strike damage. It does not benefit as much from weapon mastery, and the attack speed on it is very good, but the stats on it are all terrible. You're basically missing, if I compare this with one of my weapons, I'm missing 45% crit damage, 25% vulnerable damage, 25% core skill damage, 93 dexterity. No thank you. No thank you. I do not want to lose all of that. I'm losing way too much damage just to get this attack speed. Feel free to use it if you want, because the attack speed does feel pretty insane. But in my opinion, it is just worse for the build. And then for some survivability, you want to have disobedience. For the extra armor, you want to have cheats. Cheats is pretty bad unless you have penitent greaves, so keep an eye out for that. And then on the helmet, you want aspect of might, so basic skills give you damage reduction. Alright, when it comes to the rolls on your pieces of gear, on the helmet, you want cooldown reduction paired with max HP, paired with poison imbuement ranks, and then I went maximum energy, but you'd probably rather have this be armor or dexterity, but getting ranks to poison imbuement is very nice on the helmet, and the cooldown reduction is just great for reducing the cooldown of your clone, and also the poison imbuement itself. On the chest, you want armor, damage reduction, and damage reduction from close, and then maximum HP. Getting extra damage on the chest isn't really that good. You'd rather just have all the survivability as humanly possible. On the gloves, you want crit chance, ranks to twisting blades, and then attack speed. And then you don't want crit damage with imbued skills because it's not going to work with twisting blades. Or sorry, with poison imbuement. So alternatively for the fourth stat, you can get like all stats or dexterity. Just make sure you get the core 3. The most important thing is crit chance and ranks to twisting blades. And then on the pants here, you want damage reduction from close, damage reduction, imbuement skill cooldown, and then instead of damage reduction from distant, which is still a good roll, you could get something like max HP. That is pretty much your best bet. For the boots, I went for penitent greaves, but if you wanted the pure bossing nuke build, you would swap penitent greaves to a pair of boots that had, do I have one on me? Yeah, energy cost reduction is like the main thing there, and the other stuff like maybe movement speed or something, nothing is really that good. You just want the energy cost reduction, and then again, you'd put the shadow step thing on your boots, and then you do like temerity maybe with conceited on your amulet. For the crossbow, you want a crossbow because it always rolls with vulnerable damage. The DPS stat on the crossbow doesn't matter for your weapons, but all these stats on it do. So you want vulnerable damage, crit damage, vulnerable damage again, dexterity, and damage to close. That's pretty much the god roll here. Just make sure to at least get vulnerable damage twice, and then the crit damage is next to that. Same thing with your swords. You want to be using swords because they always roll crit damage, and you benefit more from weapon mastery. So you want crit damage, vulnerable damage, crit damage, and then dexterity, and then you want like core skill damage or damage to close. On the rings, pretty much same story. This ring is literally perfect. Vulnerable damage, crit chance is the most important thing on the ring because it's very hard to come across crit chance. So crit chance, vulnerable damage, crit damage, and then you want like max HP or damage to close. That is going to be your god roll. These two rings that I have are pretty good. The shadow damage here is pretty useless, but otherwise I'm pretty happy with these rings. And then on the amulet, you can actually get a lot of different stuff. Ranks to Malice is incredibly good because it just increases your damage against vulnerable. But alternatively, Weapon Mastery is basically the same thing, just increasing your multiplicative damage with your sword. So Weapon Mastery is very good as well. Exploit is okay against bosses, but I wouldn't really recommend it otherwise. Frigid Finesse is good for ad clearing, but if you're trying to kill bosses, you want Malice and Weapon Mastery, okay? Alternative to that, you want to get some cooldown reduction, just to reduce the cooldown on your imbuement skills, and then damage reduction and armor is just great for just survivability. You could also get imbuement skill ranks instead of like the damage reduction to just buff up your poison imbuement, and you could also get energy cost reduction. If you wanted a purely bossing necklace, you'd want like ranks, cooldown reduction, imbuement skill, and then energy cost reduction, but then you're going to be pretty squishy. When it comes to the gems that you want topazes in your armor for the damage reduction whenever you get CC'd, just so you don't die in a CC. And then you want emeralds on all of your weapons for the crit damage, and then your jewelry, you want to have the skulls because armor is very nice to have. When it comes to the Paragon board, I'm currently set up pretty much just for nuking bosses, but it still works very well outside of nuking bosses, but keep in mind, a lot of my decisions are based on just trying to kill bosses as quickly as possible, and I intentionally skipped a lot of survivability stuff, so if you're dying, go more into survivability, but I'm trying to do as much damage as possible, and that's how the board is set up. So in the first board, I'll go over this really quickly, but it will be on the website. For the first board, I just went for closer for the extra cutthroat skill damage. The second board, I just grabbed a lot of damage against traps, and I got some damage reduction. And then damage to enemies affected by traps is fantastic, 10% multiplicative. And then deadly ambush is unbelievably powerful, which is the main reason why we were using poison trap to begin with. In the next board, I went exploit weakness, but I did not actually pick it up because I figured it was actually better to save a lot of these points and to get a whole bunch of damage to elites. Vulnerable damage, there's a ton of really good stuff on this board. You get a crazy amount of vulnerable damage. And then I went for combat for the extra crit damage with core skills. And then on the next board, I went tricks of the trade, but I didn't pick it up. And I got just a bunch of damage to close enemies, and I got Turf for the damage reduction and just a little bit of extra damage. Turf kind of sucks, but I like this board for the damage to close and the extra crit damage on here, but this is probably the weakest board out of all of them, but the damage to elites is pretty good. And then on the last board, I went No Witness, and I grabbed a lot of the extra damage nodes here, and I buffed up my Exploit. No Witness is great because it has just a ton of strength on it, so you can buff up your Exploit. If you're not level 100, you need to get Exploit as soon as humanly possible, so you would actually just swap the position of Deadly Ambush and No Witness. You'd have Deadly Ambush be your first board, and you'd instantly slot in Exploit, and then your second board would be No Witness. So I will have that, or sorry, your second board would be Deadly Ambush. Again, the Paragon board will be on the website. That's pretty much it for the build. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please make sure to drop a like, subscribe for videos similar to this one, and I will see you guys later.